Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. We have just been covering an awful lot of really exciting ground lately, and I want to share with you information that I have and I've known about for some time. Some things I'm adding to a stockpile of information I have, but I was asked and have been asked to do a little more history on what the hell is going on. So in particular, I want to talk about the use of immigration as a New World Order tactic. So yes, I'm going to talk about the New World Order. I'm going to talk about the Illuminati. I'm going to talk about a world conspiracy. All right, conspiracy theory. No, these are conspiracy facts at this point. But specifically, in particular, I want to address immigration. I want to talk about where we came from, where we're at now and what they're doing, and what the ultimate objective is of this. Now, there's a lot of this Agenda 21 and the 2030 plan. There is all of that stuff. But I want to cover immigration and how it's going to be used. Now, I have been criticized in the past for talking about social engineering, right? Because social engineering sounds like there has to be a plan behind it, an organized plan. Well, guess what? There is a plan. So I'm going to refer you to a lot of things as we discuss this. But before we get to the discussion about where we're going, I'd want to start with who are we as a species? As you know, as the top of the food chain on the planet, as far as we know, who are human beings? Well, we're comprised of geographical regions, and we're comprised of individual races. And we all have individual personality types amongst all those races. And some geographic locations lend themselves more to one type of personality than another due to restrictions and requirements of environment, right? So, you know, our planet was made up of people who are Asian, Oriental, who have for centuries, or at least the decades I'm aware of, their color was considered yellow. Africa, black, right? Europe, white. In North America, they were red, right? The Polynesians, South Americans, brown, right? People who tanned a lot. This is just skin color. That's all it really is. It's skin color. But when we talk about why we have different races and how we think about ourselves and work within our own peoples, right? We are all tribal when you come down to it. You can talk about the world, and you can talk about nations, you can talk about maybe states or counties, and then you can talk about cities, but it comes down to your neighborhood, the areas you live in. We're very tribal that way. For example, in Europe, there's nations with borders, there's language differences between the nations, and within those nations, there's different cultures, belief systems, there's social construct, right? There's law and order. And they're all very similar, but they have their specialties. And those specialties are developed based on geographic restrictions, or the complexity of the environment, how conducive it is to agriculture, what type of agriculture, right? And same with Africa. It's got a variety of regions. It's not all, right, like the desert up north, and it's not all like the jungles on the west coast. It's not all like South Africa and Zimbabwe. It's a very mixed culture continent, and there are cultures within cultures and rules and laws and different customs and traditions. This is what makes humanity great, is our differences and the experiments that each one conducts to see how things work best. But if you want to rule the world from one seat, one idea, one philosophy, one ideology, you need everything uniform. You need it unified, playing by the same rules, so everyone understands each other, and there's a universal language. And the universal language is math, but there's also a universal spoken language when it comes to communication, right? And that's largely English right now, but it could change, who knows? But the people themselves were radically different. I mean, just take a look at me. I'm very Northern European looking. That's my phenotype. White skin, blonde hair, blue eye, tall, whatever. Very different than someone from Southeast Asia. Very different from all over the place. So if you need to have a one world government structure, understanding, you need to get rid of these dramatic differences between people. Right? Now, let's just pretend we're multi-billionaires. We're trillionaires. We're above governments and kings, and we pull strings and everyone does our bidding. If you wanted to have a unified world that could be managed, what would be the ideal system? They've tried having nation states communicating and cooperating and working together, and how does that work out? You get pissed off, you get national, you get protective, you put up tariffs, right? The system we have now is very difficult for them to control. Very difficult. Especially with this concept called, having republics, right? They want democracy so that they can vote for stuff. Anyways, the idea of a republic, totally different. Wrong discussion. I'll shelve that. There are programs in place, and I'm going to get to them in a second. And then there are literary references to how things will work if they do what they plan. So, once again, we're talking about immigration. Why bring Africans, Middle Easterners into Europe? And why allow them to disobey law, bring their own culture? Why allow them to commit crime? Crime like rape. Literally allowing rape, allowing assault, allowing people to violate the laws of their nation, which were established in concert with tradition and culture, as well as fundamental religious beliefs and tenets. Why allow them to do that? Why support them with the money taken by taxes from others and given to these immigrants who have no desire to assimilate? Why do it? What is the plan here? Well, I can tell you what the plan is. It is called the Coudenhove-Kalergi plan. Now, there's a link to the literal translation from German into English. Got that link, and then I've also got a video presentation from Sticks and Hammer. You can look at one, the other, both, it doesn't matter. The plan, though, is to eliminate individual races and have a homogeneous, unified race. That's right. The new race is going to be no race. The new race is going to be no nationality, no borders. Where have we heard that before? They don't want borders. They want one world, and so they need one people. One people. Now, years ago, I did read this article. It was in Time or Newsweek, and it talked about the two types of people that are developing, coming out of this world. There were going to be what we would consider, by today's standards, tall and attractive people with white skin. And then there was going to be a second race that was being developed. And it is a homogeneous race that is not very white, that is a mixture of white and brown and black and yellow and red and everything in between. And this race is going to be shorter, a little squatter, a little less attractive by our glamorous Hollywood standards. But it would be very much homogenized, mixed up, uniform. Why? How would we end up with two systems? Well, one is the elite and the wealthy. And they will continue to select and choose and breed the way aristocracy always has. And they will be able to be easily identifiable by sight. Right? They haven't got shit all over them. That's how you'll recognize them. The rest of us are set to be destroyed as individual and beautiful races, no matter what the color. The beauty's gone, the culture's gone, the tradition's gone. They want to destroy all of that. Because culture and tradition gives you an identity, right? The nation state in which you live gives you an identity, something to believe in and something to defend. So this Kalergi plan, the idea is to use immigration to bring people from different parts of the world together, to get them to breed together, right? Whether by force or by fiction, one way or another, they're going to force this to happen. Allow it to happen. Make it happen so that in a few generations, there is no Poland, there is no Netherlands, there is no United Kingdom, there is no Italy. Everyone is looking the same, and you're all playing on the same team. Right? No more distinctions. Now, they like to sell us this stuff. That's right, sell it to us. Oh, race isn't important. Culture isn't important. Intelligence isn't important. We're all the same, aren't we? That's the socialist mantra. We're all the same. No borders. How can any country with elected officials whose job it is to protect that country, how can they allow undocumented, unrestricted immigration into their country unless they were part of this Kalergi plan system designed to destroy our individualism and homogenize the entire planet? That's exactly what they're doing. It's exactly what they're doing. And I want to tell you some of the people, and I'm going to put a link to this, some of the people who have gotten an award for helping carry out this program. Every year, right, key promoters get an award called the International Charlemagne Prize. Right? So I'm going to start in 2018. How about Emmanuel Macron? 2016, Pope Francis. 2014, Herman Van Rompuy. He's the jackass that was insulted by Nigel Farage in EU Parliament when he said that Van Rompuy looked like a banker in a cheap suit, right? And then he apologized to bankers for insulting them by including them with him. All right, we can go down the list. Here's some more names you just might recognize. Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, Angela Merkel. Right? Have you heard of these names? You know, here's another one you just might remember. How about Helmut Kohl? I believe he was the German Prime Minister a long time ago. More notably than that, let's just go with Henry Kissinger. Right? These are the same trilateral commission, Bilderberg. Right? They're the same Council on Foreign Relations. They're the same one world order people. But they are tied in this list directly to the Kalergi plan, which is to eradicate nationalism, to eradicate race, to eradicate our individuality and make us a collective DNA soup. Now, why would they do that? Well, if they need to take over a country, they need people, at first fighting amongst each other, right? This group versus that group versus this group, and they use voting to decide. Well, no matter who votes for who, the people in office all want the same thing, this Kalergi plan, because their actions demonstrate that that's what they want. Open border policy, taking everyone's money and giving it to the immigrants, allowing the immigrants to violate our rules, allowing them to violate women, that is, impregnate them against their will, and force them to have, right, these fucked up children of rape, no identity. What else is going on with this program? In order to make the state supreme, you have to destroy all other culture, and that includes the family. Right? The state is your mommy and your daddy. The state is your boss. The state tells you what to do, so you don't need a mommy and a daddy. You don't need a culture. You don't need a tribe, right? Doesn't matter what color your tribe is. You don't even need that. And when they destroy everything and mix it up, right, they'll get rid of it. Now, the time being, they're using these almost militant gang-style immigrants to infiltrate and to violate the rest of culture in the United States, England, Europe, around the world. And later they will get rid of that influence, that gang mentality. But first they need to integrate all the races. And like I said, I believe all the races are necessary. Now, why are they doing this? Now that we've identified where we came as humans, where we're at today, and why they're doing it, what is the purpose behind it? The purpose is one world government, one world law, one world economy for the benefit of the one world elite. It's not going to be one person sitting on one throne that gets everything and everyone else is slave material. There has to be an administrative apparatus, a hierarchical pecking order, the typical pyramid of power, right? At the top you have the elite, you have some mid-level administrators, and then at the bottom you have the working masses. Now there's two literary examples that I can point to help demonstrate and show where we're going because of when those books were written, what they talked about, and how it's being realized today. Now lately I've talked a lot about Ayn Rand's book Atlas Shrugged, describing the political ignorance and stupidity demonstrated in that book and comparing it to the political ignorance and stupidity today. We're going to leave that aside and we're just going to take a look at two books. I'm going to start with George Orwell's 1984. It was a very much book demonstrating the heavy-handedness of government, right? The naked fist, no velvet glove. You will do as you're told. The government knows everything. The surveillance state is supreme. The government wields absolute power. You must obey or you will be punished. That's what that book described. Moreover, it described three areas around the world. Kind of a three-legged world conflict system. Right? And they used war to divide and conquer, war to divide the people and focus them, right? And manipulate them and control them and benefit the people at the top, of course. But if we move on to the next book, it is Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And it is more of a, the government system in that was more, I'm going to use the word very loosely, humanitarian. It was technocratic in nature. The people were genetically controlled. All births were done synthetically. That is, they were test tube babies. They were engineered and designed in the numbers needed as prescribed by the system that was in control of the whole world. The whole world. So if they needed workers, they could create them. And it was a type of human. Had a certain type of look, a certain type of intelligence, a certain psychology, and it had a certain indoctrination. And they didn't use the heavy-fisted, heavy-handed control technique that they did in the book 1984. Instead, this is a more advanced version of 1984 when wars are done away with, and now we have an administrative apparatus, an economic apparatus, and people were very much controlled and lived within a controlled environment that did what? That promoted their life to the point that they were useful, and when they weren't useful, they were taken and disposed of. But up to that point, they lived a very agreeable life depending on their status in the system. So they had the mass of workers. Then they had a mid-level of management and engineers that would handle the lower stuff. And then there was an elite at the top. An elite at the top that handled major decisions. an elite at the top, and they were also genetically controlled and monitored. They were raised, these elites, to think a certain way and given a lot of latitude. Right? The higher you were in the system, the more freedom you have. Sounds like today, when you're wealthy, you have a lot more freedom to travel. You have a lot more freedom to do what you want for a living that is a profession. You have a lot more free time, literally. And in fact, if we look back at immigration of old, if you were wealthy, you could travel for a number of reasons. You were higher class, you had better manners, and when you went to another country, you had money, and they didn't have to worry about you screwing them over. They wanted you to come there and give your wealth over to them, right? And if you wanted to immigrate there permanently, if you had enough money, you were more than welcome. If you're poor, it was a GTFO system. Anyways, back to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. You can look up and go read these books, and you'll find out where we're at when you combine it with the Kalergi plan. In Brave New World, everything was controlled. There were no enemies, but there were, interestingly, these people who lived in cities. And then there were people who refused to participate. And they lived like barbarians in remote outposts, right? But the elites, the brains, the technocracy of the Brave New World, right? It had everything that a person could want. Soma was a drug that you took. It was the wonder drug. It was like a Xanax, a Quaalude, and amphetamines, and what's that other one? Ecstasy, all rolled together, right? Whatever your problem was, you take a Soma holiday. You pop a little pill and everything's fine. But you have all the comforts, the creature comforts. Even if you're one of the poor, you're working, but you've been conditioned to live in that, and you understand your place. That is the world these people are trying to build. But they can't have that world that they control and dominate and benefit from while everyone works like little worker ants with little hive minds. They can't have that as long as we have nations with borders. They can't have that brave new world as long as there are black people and brown people and white people and lightly tanned people and yellow people and red people with straight hair and curly hair and brown hair and black hair and white hair and red hair and orange hair. They can't have that if we have different cultures, if we have different concepts about what is fair and what isn't fair. But they have to destroy our cultures first before they can hammer out the system they want. Always, always, in order to bring in a new system, you have to destroy the old one. Make it worthless. Because if it has value, people will try and save it, salvage their culture, who they are as a people, where they came from. This is what, by the way, kings in history past did. When they went in and they destroyed someone else's army, they would go into the nearby towns and they would go to the churches and they would burn the Bibles, because in those Bibles were birth records. They would destroy the records of the people, who they were, who married who, into what family, what they did. Take their wealth and destroyed them utterly so that they could be conquered and controlled more easily than a people who knew exactly who they were, where they came from, what their history was, who they were as a people and their belief system. So we're not looking right now with this immigration. It is not a war with cannons and bombs and tanks. It is a war of individual versus individual. It is a war that is being fought to destroy who you are. That is why they promote this idea of open borders and immigration with no enforcement of law, no requirement to integrate, assimilate, and become an American, or in Europe to become a Frenchman, right? Or a German. This is why they tell people in Germany, and they have billboards with women dressed wearing the hijab saying, you need to accommodate them. This is why up in Sweden and Norway, right, white women are being raped by Arab men, and it's being allowed by the government and not prosecuted. And why the people tolerate it is beyond me. But here we are in America. We are getting the same problems. And we're tolerating it. We're about to find out. We're at an interesting place in history with the Jeffrey Epstein episode. He is, and I'm going to just throw this in real quickly. It has been my opinion for a long time that he was an agent of at least the United States government and maybe the United States, Israel, and England. An agent of one or all three or two or whatever. But he was an agent who was empowered and allowed to do underage prostitution with other powerful politicians, business leaders, lawyers, bureaucrats, etc., so that they could get them to behave in such a way that is so reprehensible that if it was discovered, they would be destroyed and imprisoned. And that is called blackmail. That is a way you can extort someone. So I believe Epstein was an agent of government or governments that was allowed to do this so that they could then control those politicians and businessmen and make them do as they're told. Of course, they'll continue to be rewarded financially, but they will make decisions that are against their better judgment and against decency and morality, right? How could someone claim that their country's national sovereignty was important if they were just having sex with 3 underage girls? They couldn't make any claim to morality, could they? No, they better do as they're told and vote for illegal immigration. They better do as they're told and vote for asinine, voluminous quantities of deficit spending every year in Congress and the Senate. And in the Supreme Court, they need to make rulings that are completely asinine and against any notion of constitutionality or just decency and common sense. How do they make those rulings unless they aren't already controlled? It is a disgusting world, and we're going to discover through this Epstein investigation whether there is any modicum of justice or whether they're going to put a few sacrificial goats out there for everyone to feel that this justice has been served. They got all 4 of them. Boy, we're safe now. No, we're going to find out. This is a key moment. It's a key moment in human history as to whether we're going to go down the course and continue down the Kalergi road, continue down the United Nations road, down the path the Illuminati has chosen that will make them supreme authoritarians over the entire planet. And this plan wasn't set to take place in 2 years or 5 years or 10. This plan, this long-held vision of a new world order, according to George H.W. Bush, president back in the 80s and then 90s, this long-held plan for a new world order that he was superbly and supremely confident of is going to take centuries to act and play out. And it is taking a long time, but they are on course to do it. And they need to destroy us in order to get there. Destroy our economy, destroy our culture, destroy our laws, destroy our social structure. Are they or are they not doing these things? Just in the last few years, me and every person I talk to who has an ounce of intelligence, and I say, what happened to the America you grew up in? And none of them can answer. They say, it's not the America I grew up in. It is absolutely changed. And we're looking at the complete destruction of America in the next 5 to 10 years. A huge key, folks, is the economic, financial, and monetary destruction of the United States of America, as well as the European Union and the rest of the world, so that they can introduce the next phase of control, taxation, regulation, and requirement on everyone. They're going to do this crypto thing. But guess what? 25 years ago, they called it a cashless society. They called it the mark of the beast. The conspiracy controversy back then over money was they're going to take your money away from you and give you the chip. They're going to microchip you. Well, they don't even need to do that. They've gone past that. They can do bio, right? Handprint, fingerprint, facial scan, right? Retina reading. They don't have to chip us. They don't have to chip us at all. But they can go cashless, and they're pushing, and now people are demanding it because they think it's going to free them. Oh, cryptocurrency's anonymous. No, it's not. No, it's not, because built into the blockchain is a tracking technology to see every transaction where that dollar, that unit of currency, came from, and was it taxed, and what was purchased with it, and why, and when, and where, and who. They can track everything. They can freeze your account. They can stop you from existing unless you behave. In China, they're developing social scores. That is, if you don't think or say or speak or behave in certain ways, you get a lower score. So if you want a higher score, you're going to start behaving the way they want you to. They're going to start, right, telling you use the right words and you're going to get further in life. Instead of it being voluntary, it'll become mandatory. Instead of there being no punishment for being yourself, there's going to be ultimate punishments for trying to be yourself. And we're going to get to the point ultimately where they have a homogenized population and a control system. And they will be able to say, what, we all look alike now. We need to control the population. We need to control the personality types. Right? This is where they're going. They're developing the technology. Are we going to be individuals, humans? Or are we going to become their slaves to be manipulated and controlled to a greater and greater degree? It's a question we have to ask ourselves. But where are you going to go to fix the problem? You go to Congress, they don't change anything. You go to the bureaucrats, they blame Congress. You go to the police and law enforcement, they say they're just doing as they're told. They're told to stand down, to allow. Oh, they can't do that, John. Go to Portland, Oregon, where they'll beat the living shit out of you and the police will stand there and watch. And say, well, we don't want to upset the little terrorist Antifa types. This is the world we have. And sadly, and I apologize to my children, I apologize that this is the world they're inheriting. And that it's now their fucking problem. And that I wasn't able to stop it. As much as I wanted, as hard as I tried. Screaming at the top of my lungs that social engineering is a massive destructive vehicle. It is a weapon of destruction. And we all suffer for it. All of us. And I fought it and I've been castigated. I've been punished for it. I've been ridiculed. I've been laughed at. On the other hand, I've also been applauded and thanked for it. But this world does not like that. Not the world that they want, the rulers. Right? You guys represent a very small percentage of the population that doesn't like what's going on, that wants to stop it. And we can't do any of that unless we understand exactly what the problem is. And once we know exactly what the problem is, why they're doing it, where we came from, where we're at, and where they want to go, when you have all that down, now you still have the incredibly difficult work of stopping a system that is backed not by the military, the financial and economic and political systems of one nation, but of every nation in the world. They want this. Maybe Russia doesn't, and I hope not. Maybe China doesn't, and I hope not. But it sure feels like they're all in cahoots to greater and lesser degrees. This is the world that's coming. I've got anywhere from another, 15 to 50 years to live, depending on whether they want to give me cancer or kill me, right? Whether I become crippled or lose my mind. Whether I fall in an industrial pulverizer, right? I don't have a whole lot longer to go. My life isn't over. In fact, I'm in the prime as far as I'm concerned, right? But I can be ended. And the people that are growing up now, these fucked up millennials, not the good millennials, the fucked up millennials, who have this hive mind of socialism, right? Who think that color doesn't matter, because race doesn't matter, because culture doesn't matter, because tradition doesn't matter, because religion doesn't matter, because nation states don't matter. They believe that. And so they're allowing and willing to let go of who we are. If you are of African descent, you should know who you are and understand that and where you came from and use it to build and make things better. If you're Native American, same story. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why is it important? What's your culture? How does it make you a better person? How can you behave within that system that makes everything better? And keep our individuality and our histories, because that's who we are, instead of abandoning it all and adopting a satanic system that is an adversarial system. That's what Satan is adversarial. A system that is adversarial to who we are as a people. Right? God created, you could say, the individual races for a reason. And I believe it was to deal with the various geographical regions and how it works. That's how it works. Right? This color, this race, this thinking, this attitude, this body type, those became the types that worked in the various regions, and that's why they're there. And they want to destroy that. So look up the Kalergi plan. Look it up. And you'll understand, whoa, what a fucking mess. All right, folks, I'm going to leave it there. You can do your own thinking on this. Come up with your own ideas. But this is what I see coming, and this is why. I see the past, I see where we're at, and I see clearly where they're going. And the only thing that can stop them is their own stupidity. And there is a good chance. There's a great chance that they'll fuck it all up. That is the powers that be. But there's also a chance they can succeed and destroy all of us and everything in the process. All we can do at this point, right, is inform ourselves, get prepared for the shitstorm, right, the chaos that's ahead of us, because they will destroy this system. And the reason for it is so that they can rebuild it in a model that suits their desire. All right, folks. Chance favors the prepared mind, right? Is yours. Thank you for supporting the channel and our efforts, our thoughts, our material, and the entire Prepared Mind Network. I'll talk to you again very soon. Goodbye.